Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting. It's Friday, March 25th, 2022. We're very glad you're with us this morning. Hope everybody had a good week. Our agenda this morning, we'll start out with success stories. I didn't hear, nobody emailed me anything this week, so maybe we've got some good news here on the call today. Then we'll have everybody put their 30-second introductions into the chat box. We'll then go to our committee reports. We'll go about workshop, job fairs, practice interview team, interview success workshop, and the career tip of the week. And then we will hear from our speaker, the main event, right around 10 o'clock this morning. For those people on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just enter your questions in the Zoom chat window. For those on Facebook, please just enter your questions into the comment field. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. This group's been around since the late 1990s. In 2007, I took it over, facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. In 2008, I started a first website, Career DFW, to help those who are unemployed in the DFW area by putting everything you need to know about your job search in one place. And then in 2012, I launched the second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon. If you join us for lunch, you can buy it cheaper from me today at lunch than you can on Amazon. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and you'll hear more about that in just a couple of moments. We like to start the meeting off with success stories, good news. Do we have any landings? Anybody out there have a landing they can announce?
Jeff, I have one that I can.
Okay, go ahead, Walt.
Give me some information about. Well, good morning, everyone. Walt Glass. Kathy Motor came through the interview success workshop a couple of years ago, and so there was an announcement about her landing. So I kind of synthesized what she sent to me, and so I'll read it to you. She landed as a senior manager of finance transformation for the Walt Disney Company last month. Yeah. So that should be leading finance transformation across the Disney Media Entertainment Distribution segment to deliver process improvements. So 2 years ago, she came to Texas from Chicago and got a job with RGP Consulting. So she got a consulting gig with Disney. And so she was expected to be released when the full-time positions in the group were filled. And at that time, they were all identified to be located in Burbank, California. So she was working with them remotely for about 6 months when the client then approached her to gauge interest in joining Disney in a full-time position. So now we know who's chasing who. So you have leverage here when they want you. She didn't go through the formal interview process because she worked there and met all the stakeholders and the people that she'd be working with. And it took over 4 months to complete discussions with regard to the role and negotiations to make the position compelling enough for her to convert to a full-time Disney employee working 100% remote from Texas. So they changed it from Burbank to 100% remote. She said she was really surprised when she got the offer because it contained everything I had requested in the final negotiation, plus a 20% higher signing bonus than she had requested. And she ends with, "Have a magical day."
That's cute.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Walt. Thank you for that news. All right. What we'd like everybody to do now is, if you will, please open up the chat window. Just hover over the very bottom of your screen and put in your 30-second introductions. We want to know who you are, what you do, and how you can help. So put in your name, phone number, email address, a couple positions that you're looking for, a position that you're looking for, a job title, and then list 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. And I will put all this out to an email at everybody today. For at least I'll put an email out to everybody who puts their information into the chat window. That's how I know you've attended this meeting today. So also I'll update the roster. So if you're using this for workforce as one of the things you have to do every week. Please put your information in there. And this is how I capture it. So please put in your information. We'll put 30 seconds on the clock. And when you get this list this afternoon, please look over it. Please look down the job, the companies that other people are applying to, and see if you know somebody at one of those companies. Can you help them network their way in? Because that's how most people find their jobs. So please, please, please look the list over and see how you can help somebody else. All right, it's time to hear about job, career fairs, training, and workshops that are going on. Good morning, Eldon.
Good morning, Jeff. Sorry for the slight delay there. I'm having a little issue with the trigger finger this morning, and it's hard for me to poke the keys on my keyboard. As Jeff said, my name is Eldon Zarinsky, and I'm going to present to you today information on career and job fairs and special workshops or events. This information comes from the calendar tab on the website careerdfw.org, which is on the screen in front of you. You'll notice the various colors on the calendar. They represent various topics that the calendar covers, of which I will cover too: careers and job fairs and special workshops or events. I go through these fairly quickly, so if you hear something that catches your interest, I would urge you to go to the calendar, pick on the appropriate tab and the item, and go to that item, and you'll find links to register and or have more information about the upcoming event. All right, having said that, this week's career and job fairs. There will be a medical job fair that will be held at 9053 South Race Street in Fort Worth on Wednesday, March 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is a medical job fair that's both virtual and in person, and there's information on how to participate in whatever part of the job fair you feel comfortable with. And there's also a registration link, and registration for this event is required. They're looking for RNs, LVNs, pharmacy techs, blah, blah, blah. And the companies include Baylor Scott & White, Clinical Pathologies Labs, CSL Plasma, HCA Healthcare, Jet Health, and numerous others. If you have questions, there's also information on the announcement to ask questions. Also coming up, the 2022 One Community Church Career Fair, the OCC Career Fair, will be held Saturday, April 2nd from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. At the church. And they are looking, there's several companies there: Cognizant, Independent Financial, North Texas Lead, Northwestern Mutual, Richardson ISD, and others. This week's special workshops or events. There will be a workshop on successful job searches that focus on 4 key areas. This presentation is being organized by Career Care at St. Andrew's United Methodist Church and is open to the public, and it will feature our own Jeff Morris. There's a Zoom link for that to participate, and will be held Monday, March 28th from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Online, LinkedIn Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Join Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, Ruth Lipsky, or Kurt Vondemutter each week for an online session on LinkedIn. This week's session on March 29th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. will feature Kurt Vondemutter. Also online, Interviewing Wednesdays at 1 p.m. This is a new feature that we're offering for 2022. It'll be Wednesday, March 30th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. You can observe a practice interview from the pit crew. And there's a Zoom link and I believe a Facebook. Well, there's at least a Zoom. I don't see the Facebook.
Yeah, well, also, and just one more thing, this Wednesday, instead of actually watching a practice interview, we'll be doing session number 13, Avoiding Interview Crashes. So special presentation this coming Wednesday.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And also coming up on Thursday, March 31st from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., 4 main areas of your job searches to search to focus on. This is also going to be provided by our own Jeff Morris, and there's a Zoom link and a Facebook link for that. Again, that's Thursday, March 31st from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. And Jeff, do you have any more information you'd like to add for that?
No, it's sort of the same presentation you'll see on Monday. It's just that I'll be doing that presentation in front or for the Association of Managed Care Professionals out of Chicago, Illinois. And I don't know who will be there out of the 3,500 people who may show up, but I'm just doing the presentation there. I'm running a LinkedIn lounge and career area for them for a 2-day conference up there. So it's just one of the presentations I'm giving, and since it's the 5th Thursday of the month, we won't do networking or resumes. We'll pick that up again next week.
Okay,
2 weeks.
Thanks. And finally, an in-person event. It's the St. Jude Career Alliance in Allen, Texas. We'll hold a workshop on Saturday, April 2nd from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there is a link to register for that, and registration is required. And there's also another link for additional information if you want to find out more about what that event is about. And that's it for this week.
Great. Eldon, thank you. Eldon, thank you very, very much. All
My
right.
pleasure.
If you know somebody who's unemployed, I know the last week's unemployment numbers were like the lowest in many, many years, 187,000 or something like that. Very low number. But if you know somebody who's recently unemployed, somebody's been unemployed for a while, somebody's not sure what to do, please tell them about Career DFW and CareerUSA.org. All right, it's time to hear from the practice interview team. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Jeff, and thank you. I'm Mark McDonald. I'm going to tell you about practice interview team, and we're all about building your confidence and preparing you to be successful in your interviews. And that might be an initial interview, it might be a 4th round interview. We do it all. And so how do you get a practice interview? You need to provide a job description and your resume. So we take that job description and of course your resume and where you are in the process of the interviews, and put together a customized and personalized practice interview experience. It'll be a panel interview. There'll be 3, sometimes 2, but usually 3 panelists. Those panelists have all been hiring managers, and they've also all been through job transition. As a matter of fact, most of them are currently in job transition, and they volunteer their time, their skills, and their abilities to help you improve your interviewing so we can shorten your job search. You know, there's a lot of money on the line, getting back to work as quickly as possible, and that's what we'd like to enable you to do. Now, that may take more than one practice, so don't think one and done is it. You should practice early and practice often, and practice early means early in your job search. Even if you don't have an opportunity in hand, find a job description that looks good to you, one that represents what you'd like to do. It may be in another, maybe out of town that you aren't considering relocating, but that's not the point. The point is to practice your skills, convincing hiring managers that you're the right person for the job. So any good job description will do, no matter where it is or how interested you are in it. And we'll work with that, get you, knock the rust off, so to speak. And then you may want to practice again for other opportunities as they come up. I suggest maybe 5 practice interviews would get you all squared away in all the aspects of interviewing. And so that's how the PIT crew works. And you send that information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Everything associated with the PIT crew goes through that email, dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Also, there's my phone number there. If you want to call me, that's a Google Voice line that comes to me. So if you have any questions, just reach out. And finally, the dallaspitcrew@gmail.com is where you can find everything I'm talking to you about today. dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. I'm sorry. That's the email address. The web address is dallaspitcrew.com. dallaspitcrew.com. There we go. What's next? One-way interviews. PIT crew also offers one-way interviews, give you a chance to interact with these one-way video interviewing tools, which is a very strange experience, I have to say. It's worth practicing. And the PIT crew makes it as easy as possible for you. We give you the questions in advance, and then we'll give you a link to the tool, and then you get to engage it just like you would if a company had asked you to do one of these video interviews. There's only 4 questions. I'm really trying to get you used to answering questions when nobody's on the other end. And so just reach out to me at dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. and we'll set that up for you. There's my LinkedIn profile. Please send me a message that says we met, North Dallas Career Focus Group. That's all it has to say. You know, I'm not responding to requests for linking that don't have a message with them. And I also coach. So if you're going to struggle answering the question, if you believe you're going to struggle answering the question, why did you leave your last job? Then I've got help for you. I kind of fell into this just through my work at the pit crew and found out that I have a knack for helping people understand what happened to them and how to answer that question. So we can have a confidential session on the phone, or we can record it on Zoom so you can look at it later. But that, if you have any doubt at all that you're going to have trouble, if you have any suspicion at all that you're going to have trouble answering that question, then let's have a conversation. Everything the pit crew does is absolutely free. So it's just a little bit of time for you to find out if there's a better way to tell your story. And volunteers, boy, I have a suspicion I have like 3 of my panelists who are just about ready to land. You know, you've heard the unemployment numbers. Almost everybody's finding a job these days. So I'm always looking for new volunteers, and there's only one prerequisite required, and that's that you've been a hiring manager as part of your professional responsibility. So if that's something you'd like to do, give back to the job search community while you're in job search yourself, then I've got something for you. It's very satisfying, and you'll learn a lot as well. You'll benefit. You'll get more out of it than you give, and that's saying a lot, because helping others improve their interviewing skills is a very satisfying and rewarding thing to do. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. All right, it's time to hear from Walt Glass, the interview success coach. Good morning, Walt.
Well, good morning again to everyone. Let me just plug the Saturday, April 2nd session at St. Jude for the Career Alliance session. That is an excellent day from about 9 to 3. And it reviews Jack Bick's book. He is a career coach. Gives you some highlights on all the 4 stages of the job search. So I highly recommend you look at that. There is a small fee, but you get his book, and you also get a free lunch. So it's under the guise of, if you feed them, they will come. So come on along. All right, so what do? I like to help people gain confidence for successful job interviews. And how do I do that? I do it through a free interview success workshop. This workshop is very different from the pit crew, which I heartily support and recommend that you participate. But my question to you is, what are we really selling and what are they really buying? So I contend that what the companies are buying today are basically 3 things. That's who we are, what we do, and how we can help. So our soft skills, our personality, our character, the likability factor. This is the one where they would like us to work there. They would like working with us. Do we meet that criteria? Does our background and experience meet the I do side? And then the I help side, which is rarely sold in an interview. What is it that you can do with your personality and characteristics and your background, experience, and hard skills in order to provide a value to them? Every position has a reason to be hired, and it's not just to do something, it's the result of what we do. So how do we sell that in an interview? So I do it through fundamentals, through the 12 basic categories of questions, the approaches, strategies, options, structures, how we might answer that, so that we can feel very confident and start practicing those things. It's free, no charge at all. All you have to do is to sign up is to register, send me an email to the Yahoo email address. You can look at my LinkedIn profile for more information about the particulars on the workshop. But send me that and I'll send you availability dates to accomplish. I only do 1 or 2 people at a time. And it's very, very informal. There's no reason to have stress and anxiety while we're just trying to learn to improve our skills. So if you would like to register for that, there is a QR code on the screen right now, and it's the beginnings of an email to my Yahoo email address. All you have to do is edit a few areas, and I'll be glad to respond to you with availability days. So while we're sitting here in the process of practicing and learning, and you get a video of your interview, and we discuss things, all this sort of thing, we can learn without squirming. Well, I have 2 poems today. So, that just meant I couldn't sleep during the night as much as I might want to. But nonetheless, so there's two. If you haven't practiced interviewing before, then the interviewer, you might bore. So keep practicing to build rapport. It will get you through the company door. And then one specifically for today's event, welcome to the North Dallas Plano Focus Group, so we can get job search scoop. I bid you listen to Jay Fusaro to learn networking actions that we should follow.
All right, double applause today. Thank you very, very much. Okay, it's time to hear from the career tip of the week. Liz is back with us, feeling better, I hope, and thank you for being with us this morning.
You're welcome. Yes, I can talk today. And good morning, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. The current tip of the week is don't make these 3 mistakes when applying for a remote job. And this is by Morgan Smith. If you're hoping to start or continue working from home full-time, you're in luck. The number of remote positions has surged over the past year, and today's competitive job market is teeming with opportunities. Even though the number of job openings is near an all-time high, landing a remote position requires different strategies than the traditional application process that, if missed, could stall your remote job search. The number of applicants we're seeing for each remote job as posted lately has skyrocketed. FlexJobs career coach Tony Frana tells CNBC, make it. If you don't tailor your application accordingly, you're not going to stand out. Below, Frana shares the 3 biggest mistakes to avoid during your remote job search and how to catch a recruiter's eye instead. Applying for a remote job outside your region. About 95% of all remote job listings have a geographic requirement, whether it's a specific state, city, or country, according to FlexJobs. Companies include such a requirement to meet tax and licensing law or an existing client base, among other reasons. Not meaning a company's location requirement can quickly land your application in the rejection pile. So make sure you're filtering out jobs on search boards that aren't available based on where you live, and double checking the location requirements on a remote job description. Forgetting to include a remote specific skills on your remote. This is number 2, Jeff. Forgetting to, there you go. Employers are looking for candidates who can learn fast and manage themselves in a remote environment. Highlight remote specific skills such as time management, communication, organization, and your technological prowess on your resume to impress hiring managers. If you don't have remote work experience, Frana recommends explaining how you've used problem-solving skills to succeed in your most recent role, or mentioning your ability to thrive in a fast-paced environment on your application. Both skills show an employer that you have what it takes to be successful as a remote employee. Your remote experience doesn't need to come from a formal work setting either. And if you communicate with friends over Zoom or help someone navigate Microsoft Teams for virtual work or school meeting, Frana says you can refer to those examples during an interview or list the online platforms you're familiar with under your resume skills section. Number 3, casting too wide of a net. If you're eager to find a remote job, chances are you're spending hours each week scanning job boards and submitting the same resume. And while sending in 30 applications might feel productive, it's really hurting your chances of getting an offer. And it's a common mistake that a lot of job seekers fall victim to, Frana notes. But remote job seekers are especially vulnerable to this misstep because online jobs can feel more casual. It takes time to edit each resume to match the job description, but the more thoughtful your application is, the better results you're going to have versus relying on the number of applications you're submitting. She suggests focusing on open roles at no more than 5 companies that align with your personal mission and career goals. It's important to think about what else you want in your next role besides flexibility. When you start your job search, ask yourself these questions. What kind of team do I want to be on? What impact do I want my work to have? You need to know these answers to truly find the right remote job for you. So good luck, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Liz, thank you very, very much. If you'd like to go back and reread this tip, it is on the Career DFW Career USA website, and there's a new tip every Saturday afternoon. All right, today for lunch, if you'd like to join us for lunch, we hope you will. We're going to be at Dickey's Barbecue. We all voted last Friday that Dickey's was the place to go. We hadn't been there for a while. So, you know, if you're from Texas, it's your responsibility to eat barbecue. So you've got to eat lunch. So come join us, Dickey's Barbecue on Preston. It's just north of Parker, just south of Spring Creek. And we'll be there at 12:30 today. All right, in just a couple of minutes, we'll hear from Jay Fusaro for our main event about effective networking. But I want to just mention upcoming sessions we have next Friday on April 1st. We'll do open forum. We will answer whatever questions you have about your job search. And then on April 8th, accomplishments, job search, advancement, and fair pay with Rick Gillis. So you're welcome to join us for the next couple of weeks. We've got speakers lined up through the entire month of April. Okay, it's time to hear from our speaker. For those of you who don't know Jay, Jay is the principal and founder of Eureka Professional Services, where as an interview coach, he provides his clients with the skills and techniques necessary to successfully conduct an efficient and effective job search. Jay graduated from Northeastern University in Boston and is a CPA in the state of Texas, as well as a certified SMU business coach. He was vice president of financial planning for Alliance Data during their successful IPO. Jay is a two-time award-winning author. His book, From the Other Side of the Desk, A Practical Guide to Shortening Your Job Search, it's an outstanding book. I mean, there's not one thing in that book that I would disagree with. I mean, I've got it. I refer to it. I go through it every once in a while. It's a wonderful book to have about your job search. After 24 years living in Dallas, he and his wife, Rosemary, moved to Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Please welcome Jay Fusaro. Good morning, Jay.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for participating, and to Walt, Mark, and Liz. And I gotta say, I think I'm gonna have Walt do my introduction from now on, because I've never had a poetry introduction before. So that was a first. So thank you very much for that, Walt. Very creative. I'm glad this is being recorded, because I might have to splice that in to future presentations. So what we're going to talk about this morning is networking, how to effectively network. But before we do that, I want to let everyone know that some of what we're going to talk about this morning, we covered last week in effective interviewing. And that's because it's going to circle around proper preparation. You need to be as prepared for a networking meeting as you are for an interview. So for those of you that were here last week, when we talk about some of the preparation, it's going to be a refresher. And for those that weren't, it'll be new information. So what's in the book and what I teach my clients is 6 things. What does a good cover letter look like? What does a good resume look like? How to effectively network, that we're going to talk about this morning. And everything that we're going to talk about this morning is in the book. How to effectively interview, how to negotiate the offer, and how to make the most of your first 90 days onboarding. That's what's in the book. That's what I teach my clients. And I've been doing this full-time since 2013. And I've had several hundred clients land. The average interview success rate is about 25%. Most people interview with 4 companies, land 1 offer. My clients are at a 62% interview success rate. And it's not because there's anything magic going on. It's simply because they're better prepared. They're better prepared going into an interview. They're better prepared for their job search overall. So we're going to talk about, as we said, effective networking, which can be a little scary. Meeting with strangers is often not a real fun thing to do. But if you're properly prepared and you know what you're going to say, it's going to lower your stress level, increase your confidence, and make networking an effective tool for you. And speaking of tools, networking is one tool in your tool bag. What you really should be doing is conducting a comprehensive job search, which includes networking, cold calling, and we'll talk about cold calling, going out on interviews, obviously, preparing for interviews, checking the big job boards that you're all familiar with, Monster, Career Builder, LinkedIn, checking your target company job boards, sending out thank you notes to people that you've interviewed with, people that you've networked with, people that have introduced you to networking partners. We'll talk about that. But that's conducting a comprehensive job search. A job search is not sitting behind a computer, sending out a bunch of resumes, or just networking, or just working with a recruiter, which you should be doing, working with one or two qualified recruiters that you have a good relationship with. That's another tool that you should be using. But it should be a multifaceted approach, not a a single approach. You need to be doing all these things to land as quickly as possible. So what is networking? To me, networking is four things. It's gathering information, gaining advice and feedback, making connections to others that can help you, and generating insights and ideas about your search. That's what networking is. It is not asking somebody for a job. That is not networking. It is not asking someone if they know of an open position. It is not asking someone, do you know of anybody that could use somebody with my skills? That's not what networking is. It's the four things that I've outlined. And I'll throw in a fifth. It is the rare chance that there could be an opening for the position. And we'll talk about that as well. But basically, that's what networking is: gathering information, gaining advice and feedback, generating insights and ideas, and making connections to others that can help you. In job search and when networking, you need to focus on what you can control. Don't focus on what you can't control. We're going to talk about how to conduct a networking meeting efficiently in a minute, but we need to lay a groundwork of search preparation and network preparation. And part of that is focusing on what you can control. Often candidates will focus, and I know this from when I was in transition years ago, you focus on what you can't control, which is, are you going to be able to meet with someone that you really want to meet with, a networking person, a networking partner in a company that you want an introduction to? Did you get an interview you really wanted? Did you advance in an interview? Did you get an offer? Don't focus on what you can't control. You'll drive yourself crazy, and it's not a productive use of your time. So for my business and when I do presentations, I can't focus on how many people show up, whether it's 2, 30, 100, 150. I can't control that. So I don't worry about how many people are going to show up. I focus on these 5 things. Focus on your attitude, your dress, your body language, your preparation, and your introduction. Now, why your introduction with networking? I've presented with Jeff's group several times. Jeff knows how to introduce me if I didn't provide him with an introduction. The reason I provide every host with an introduction is because I can control that. I can control how I'm introduced. That's the first thing. And the second reason is I want to make it easy for Jeff to have me with the group and address the group. And part of making it easy for Jeff is by providing an introduction, so he doesn't have to worry about, well, how am I going to introduce Jay? What am I going to say? He has to look up my background, things like that. Now, the reason that I provide my host with an introduction is not only to make it easy, not only is it something that I can control, it's because when I was networking, someone offered to introduce me to somebody, which they did. The person that I was meeting with didn't know me that well. They sent an email introduction to the third person. And when I scheduled the meeting and when we were having the meeting, the person that made the introduction accidentally misrepresented my background. So the networking meeting started with me correcting the host on what my background was. Now, obviously, it wasn't intentional for the person that was making the introduction, but it was a really awkward situation. And I said to myself after that meeting, that will never happen again. That will never happen again, that I will be, misintroduced by a networking person. So what you can do, because part of your job, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, but part of your job networking is to make it easy for the other person to help you. The people that you're going to network with are meeting with you for one of two reasons. Either they want to be helpful, they want to give back, maybe somebody helped them, so they're just being a good person and giving back, that's fine. Or they know of an opening, right? It's one of those two reasons is why they're meeting with you. So you want to make it as easy as possible for that person to help you. So the way you do that is you always have prepared a very brief introduction, 3 or 4 sentences, on how you want to be introduced to a third party. And at the end of the meeting, when you send that person a thank you note, you include in that thank you note an introduction that they can use on your behalf. And they'll greatly appreciate that. So you can control your introduction, your attitude. Obviously, you can control your attitude when you're networking. You need to have a positive attitude, upbeat about your job search, not say anything negative about a prior employer, right? Have a good attitude about your job search. If they ask you how it's going, you tell them things are going really well, you have a lot of good momentum. Be positive and upbeat when you're meeting with that person that you're networking with. Your dress. You need to dress for a networking meeting as if you're on an interview, because you just might be and you don't know it. And I will give you an example of that in a little bit. You need to dress for a networking meeting as if you're on an interview, because you might be and you don't know it. When I was in the corporate world, living in Dallas, and people would want to network with me, I of course, would meet with people to help. And one of the people that I met with was a professional. He made well into 6 figures. And we met at Cafe Express at Mockingbird Station. And he came in a golf polo shirt and a baseball cap. Completely unprofessional and absolutely not appropriate how you should dress for a networking meeting. If that person thought for 1 minute that I was going to open up my contact list and introduce him to other people that I know, he was mistaken. I wasn't going to do that, because I was thinking he might dress this way when he met with some of my contacts. You need to dress for a networking meeting as if it's an interview. So however you believe you would dress for an interview, if you wear a tie, that's fine. If you don't want to, wear a properly fitting shirt, one that fits properly, looks right for men, a belt with 1 crease mark in it, not 3 where you've gained and lost weight. Good looking shoes, polished shoes. However you would dress for an interview is how you should dress for a networking meeting. Do not assume what the person can and cannot do for you. You have no idea how that person can help you. You don't know who they socialize with, who they go to church with, who they play cards, tennis with. You don't know who their spouse knows. Don't assume how somebody can help you. You don't know. You have to approach each meeting as if it's an interview and prepare that way. And part of that is your dress. Your body language, same thing. shoulders back, chest out, head up, good eye contact, smile, good handshake, right? Your body language is very important, good posture. All these things go into what that networking partner is going to think of you, and your preparation. And we're going to talk about preparation in a minute, but you can control your preparation for a networking meeting. And as I said, and I know I've said it a lot already, and you'll see why in a minute, you need to prepare for a networking meeting as if it's an interview, because it just might be. That takes a lot of work. And we'll talk about how many meetings you should have, but those are the things that you can control: attitude, dress, body language, preparation, and introduction. Be confident on your networking meeting. You need to be confident when you're meeting with people, and most of these people you're not going to know. Confidence comes from proper preparation. We'll talk about how to properly prepare in a second. Confidence comes from proper preparation. The more prepared you are, the more you know what the flow of a networking meeting is that we're going to go over. The more you know about that flow, the more you know about how that person can help you, the more you know about that person, the person's company. All these things are going to improve your confidence, lower your stress level, and that's going to come through on the networking meeting. Who's in charge of your search? Who's in charge of your job search? You're in charge of your job search. It's not a coach. It's not somebody that's helping you, with Jeff's organization or other networking meetings that you're involved with. Nobody should care more about your job search than you do. When I am talking to a prospect, I can tell in pretty short order of meeting with that prospect how long it's going to take them to land by their attitude, how much ownership they take towards their job search. I make it clear before a client signs up with me that I am not in charge of their job search. I am going to teach them the 6 things that I outlined in the beginning, and they're in charge of their job search. You're in charge of your preparation. You're going to decide what's your attitude going to be on a networking meeting, how you're going to dress, what your level of preparation is going to be. Because I can tell you, your competition is not going to prepare for a networking meeting the way I'm going to suggest you prepare for a networking meeting today. 80%, maybe 90% of your competition is not going to prepare this way. But you're going to decide, because you're in charge of your search, how much you're going to prepare. Networking etiquette. When I talk about etiquette, and I say this to clients, I am not trying to be insulting. Some things you may know, some things may seem very obvious, and that's fine. But they weren't to me when I started networking. And that's why I believe covering networking etiquette before we start talking about how to handle a networking meeting is really important, because I didn't do several of these things. People that you're networking with are taking time out of their day to meet with you, whether they're employed or in transition. And let me just talk about that for a second. Some people believe that you should not network with other people that are in transition. Some people will say, I've never gotten a job from somebody that's in transition. I don't believe that, because what do you have being a person in transition? What do you have to help people? Contacts and connections. I believe 60 to 70% of the people that you network with should be employed, but the other 30 to 40% of people that you're talking to absolutely can be in transition because they have contacts and connections. So when you're meeting with people, you need to demonstrate proper etiquette. Something as simple when you're meeting with someone in a networking meeting as saying, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. people are taking time out of their day to meet with you, you need to show a little bit of gratitude. And I can tell you, I didn't do that when I was networking. So I went 17 years without being in transition when I became in transition in 2010. So 17 years, and I forgot a lot of basic fundamental things around etiquette in meeting with people, because I believe when we're in transition, we become very self-centered, very myopic. We're the ones that need help. And so unconsciously, we develop an attitude of taking. You need help, so you take. Don't be that type of person. And the way you do that is by saying thank you at the beginning and end of someone helping you. Now, the reason I know that is I was networking with a very prominent recruiter in the Metroplex, and he was taking an hour and a half a week to meet with me. And at the end of the second week, he said to me, "Do you know you hadn't said thank you once?" And I was pretty horrified about that, because I do consider myself a pretty polite person, but I was very self-centered. I needed help. He was there to help me. And so all I wanted to do was take. And I've never forgotten that. So people are taking time out of their day to help you. Express a little bit of gratitude. Ask for 20 minutes when you're setting up a networking meeting, whether it's over the phone and you're initiating, or you're sending an email. Ask for 20 minutes and ask for advice and feedback. To me, not to be corny, but like that's the phrase that pays: advice and feedback. So you ask for 20 minutes and you ask for advice and feedback. Why those two things? 20 minutes tells the person that you're going to be respectful of their time, that the meeting is not going to go on forever, that you understand their time's valuable. You just want 20 minutes of their time, and I'm going to suggest to you how you can make the most of that 20 minutes and get everything that you need during the meeting in that 20 minutes. But it tells the person that you're being respectful of their time and that the meeting's going to end at a certain time. And then you do a time check. At the end of 20 minutes, you do a time check and you say to the person, "I asked for 20 minutes. Do we need to wrap up the meeting, or do you have more time?" And they'll tell you, either I need to, I have another meeting at the bottom of the hour, we need to wrap it up, or they'll say, "No, I'm good on time, let's keep going." That's fine. Ask for 20 minutes, do a time check. Ask for advice and feedback. It's critical that you use that phrase, because a lot of people are hesitant to network with others because they fear that the person is going to ask them for a job, and they don't want to say no to the other person. They don't want to be put on the spot of, do you have a job? Most people are not going to know of open positions. So don't ask someone something that they cannot deliver. You ask someone for something that they can do. Everybody can give you advice and feedback. Most people can give you 20 minutes. So by using that phrase, advice and feedback, I would greatly appreciate your advice and feedback regarding my search. What you're telling that person is you're taking them off the hook of, you're telling them, I am not going to ask that person for a job. So right away, they're relieved that you're not going to ask them for a job. You're asking them for advice and feedback. You've said for 20 minutes. Most people are going to make time for you if you do those two things. At the end of the meeting, summarize what the person has offered to do for you. If they've offered to make 3 introductions for you, at the end of the meeting, summarize. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to the introduction to A, B, and C. The reason that you summarize at the end of the meeting is that networking meeting might be the most important thing you did all day, but it's not going to be the most important thing the other person does all day, most likely. After your meeting, their boss may come in, give them a bunch of to-dos. They may be off to another meeting. They're going to forget who they offered to introduce you to. So summarize at the end of the meeting. Hopefully they'll make a note of it. Summarize in your thank you note to that person. When you send them a thank you note, summarize again in that thank you note who they offered to introduce you to. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to these 3 introductions that you'll make on my behalf. In that thank you note is then where you would include your introduction. Please see the introduction that you can use below on my behalf. The person's really going to appreciate that. You're making their life a lot easier to help you by just being able to copy and paste the introduction that you provided into the email that they're going to use on your behalf. So summarize at the end of the meeting, summarize in your thank you note, send a thank you note, not only to the person that you met with for your networking meeting, send a thank you note to the person that made the introduction for you to that person. The reason that you do that is twofold. When I've introduced 2 people and I want to know, did they ever meet, right? So if I make an introduction to a CFO from somebody that's in transition, I at least want to know, did they get together and talk? How'd the meeting go? You did something nice. You want to know what came from it. So send a very simple thank you note to the person that made the introduction for you. Jay, thank you very much for introducing me to the CFO of XYZ company. We met Tuesday. We had a really good meeting. I believe they're going to be a significant help during my search. That's it. Very simple. You're doing it for 2 reasons. You're closing the loop with the person that made the introduction. You're telling them that you met with the person they suggested. That's good. The second reason is you're always looking for a good, legitimate reason to remind somebody that you're in transition. Now, I'm not a fan of, what I did on my summer vacation emails that you may see some people put out. I'm just not a fan of those types of emails, but you're always looking for a legitimate reason to remind somebody that you're in transition. So if I made an introduction to somebody and they hadn't had a chance for various reasons to meet with the contact for 3 weeks, I've probably forgotten about that person being in transition. So when they send me a note and say, Jay, thank you very much for introducing me to XYZ at this company, really appreciate it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That person is in transition. Kathy's in transition. So let me remember to keep my eyes and ears open for her, right? So it serves a dual purpose. It's very effective. And I've already mentioned the time check. So, so you do a time check. So that's the proper flow of the meeting. Say thank you at the beginning and end, ask for 20 minutes, ask for advice and feedback, summarize at the end of the meeting what they offered to do for you, summarize in your thank you note, send a thank you note to the person you met with and the person that introduced you, and do a time check at the end of 20 minutes. So goals and preparation of a networking meeting. Think about how many networking meetings you should have a day while you're conducting the other facets of your search. So assume that you're in the middle of a job search. You're not just starting a job search, but assume that you're in the middle of a job search. You're checking the big company job boards, Monster Career Builder, LinkedIn, your target company list. You're doing research on companies that you're interviewing with. You're doing research on companies and people that you're going to be networking with. You're sending out thank you notes to people that you've interviewed with, thank you notes to people that you've networked with, thank you notes to the people that introduced you to a networking partner. You're meeting with 1 or 2 recruiters, right? Should be very busy. So how many networking meetings a day on average should you be having? I believe the number is 2 to 3. 2 to 3 networking meetings a day during a week on average. So 8 to 10 networking meetings a week, assuming you're doing all of the other things that I had just mentioned, right? That's a comprehensive job search. Now, there are some people that will say, Jay, that's crazy. I can have 5 network meetings before lunch. Not properly. You might be able to meet with 5 people before lunch, but I just call that shaking hands and kissing babies, right? You're just like blowing through these meetings. You don't know anything about these people. You don't know anything about their company. You're just, working a line and having a meeting. You need to treat each networking meeting like it's an interview and prepare that way, because it might be and you don't know it. So 2 to 3 networking meetings a day max, assuming you're doing all the other things that you should be doing in a search. And you need to prepare for that meeting, as I said, like it's an interview. So that means you need to look up the company, know something about the company, to speak intelligently about the person's company, know something about the person, because as we said last week, 2 things need to be present for a meeting to move forward, a networking meeting or an interview. You have to establish chemistry with the person and demonstrate your technical competence. If those 2 things aren't present for a networking meeting or an interview, the meeting's not going anywhere. So how do you establish chemistry with someone? You do it by doing research on them, research on the person, and letting them do a good amount of the talking. That's how you establish chemistry with someone. Ask them open-ended questions about their background. How long, if they've been with the company a long time, say, I see you've been with the company a long time. Clearly you enjoy it. What is it about the company that you like so much? If they've been there a short period of time or been in their position a short period of time, say, I see you've been with the company for 6 months. How do you like it so far? Right? Get them talking about themselves. Don't just dominate the conversation. That's how you establish chemistry with someone. And then we'll talk about how you demonstrate your technical competence, which is by the use of a playbook. But you need to do those 2 things during the meeting. A famous athlete once said, success is when opportunity meets preparation, right? Success is when opportunity meets preparation. Cold calling needs to be part of your arsenal in your networking and your job search. Cold calling is pretty scary. I get it. I thought it is. And it can be very fruitful. The example is, I was in transition. I was low on leads and I didn't have much traction going in my search at this particular time. And I said, you know what? It was suggested to me to start cold calling CFOs. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I know I'm going to have a low hit rate, but that's fine. Not many are going to meet with you on a cold call, but I decided to do it. So, I started dialing for dollars and giving them the proper spiel that we talked about earlier. Do you have 20 minutes? I would really appreciate your advice and feedback regarding my search. I wasn't calling them for a job. Do you have 20 minutes? I would really appreciate your advice and feedback regarding my search. I probably had a 10 or 20% hit rate with CFOs. That's fine. Well, one of the CFOs that I met with was the CFO of Comerica Bank, Texas. And as every networking meeting, I prepared for that networking meeting as if it were an interview. Went through their annual report. I knew a lot about the bank. I knew a lot about him. Dressed properly, for the meeting. And when we met, I was able to establish chemistry with him because I knew his background. I knew how long he'd been with the bank and things like that. I knew a lot about the bank. So when we could talk intelligently about recent acquisitions the bank just made. So I established chemistry. I was able to demonstrate my technical competence through the use of a playbook that we'll talk about in a second. And about 20 minutes into the networking meeting, he said, do you have time to meet with some other members of my team? Because my vice president of financial planning resigned 2 weeks ago, and I hadn't had a chance to post the job. You seem like you'd be a really good fit for it. And do you have time to interview with the rest of my team? So I did, wound up getting the job with Comerica, worked for him for 5 years. He became the first CFO of Alliance Data, took me with him, worked there for 12 years, helped take the company public. So one networking meeting turned into a 17-year career with 2 companies and helping take a company public. One meeting that I was prepared for. Now, what you don't know is that was the 85th networking meeting of that search. 85 networking meetings I went on before that happened. And I prepared for the first 84 the way I did for the 85th. Now, what would have happened if I didn't do that? What would have happened if I showed up not properly dressed, ill-prepared about the bank, didn't know much about him, but just wanted to show up to see if he could help me and maybe, give me some leads? He would have seen that I was unprepared. He may have made some introductions on my behalf. He would have shook my hand and said, I hope everything works out for you. And I never would have known that there was an opening there because it wasn't posted. And I certainly wouldn't have worked for Alliance Data and helped take them public. So the hard part of networking is not the meeting. People think the hard part of networking is the meeting itself. It is not the meeting. The meeting is the easy part. The hard part of networking is all of the preparation that you need to do for each meeting. Prepare for each networking meeting as if it's an interview, because it might be. Hoping that person knows of or has an opening, but knowing that there's like a 98% chance they don't. But I wasn't willing to take that 2% chance. And I hope you're not either. You need to approach each meeting because, the way I look at it is you need one home run. One home run. The problem is you don't know which pitch is going to be the one that you're going to hit for the home run. So you've got to, take every one as if that's it. So to get emotionally prepared for a networking meeting and to prepare for a networking meeting like it's an interview, where most of them are not, can be emotionally pretty draining. That's the hard part. It's not the meeting. It's all the preparation that goes into it. It's the hope that maybe that person knows of or has an open position, and knowing that most likely they don't, right? That's the difficult part. But you just need one home run. You just need one. And that's why you need to prepare that way. Because quite frankly, a good successful networking meeting is if you walk out of the networking meeting with 2 or 3 good introductions, that's a good meeting. That's a very good networking meeting. But obviously you're hoping for the home run, not just a good, single or double, but a home run shot. But a good meeting is if you walk out of a meeting with 2 or 3 introductions, that's terrific. So developing your playbook for demonstrating your technical competence. I know we spoke about this last week, but I'm sure there's people that weren't participating last week. A playbook is everything that you're going to say during either a networking meeting or an interview is scripted out. Everything that you're going to say. Tell me about yourself. Take me through your resume. Why do you want to work here? Strengths, weaknesses. Everything in your resume should be copied into a Word document, which is what a playbook is, a Word document. Your resume should be copied into this Word document, and every bullet point on your resume needs to have a 20 to 40 second short story for why that bullet point is on your resume. When you're interviewing, 80% of a job description's bullet points, you should have a short story for an example of how you did it or that you possess that skill. About 80% from a job description and 100% obviously for your resume, because you need to have a short story for every bullet point on your resume. That's how you're going to demonstrate your technical competence to the other person, is by giving them a 20 to 40 second short story about how you did what you say you did on your resume, right? Nice, tight, concise, short story about that. If you want more information on the playbook, I went into more detail last week about it, and it's also in the book. Time every answer that you give in your playbook. Every answer, unless it's really technical, should be 20 to 40 seconds. Scripted out, timed, and spoken into your iPhone, and you listen back to your playbook constantly so you really know your background. Don't do what most people do who say, I know my background, I did it, I'm a successful professional, so I'm just going to ad lib on the interview or a networking meeting. Don't do that. That's why the interview success rate, part of the reason why the interview success rate is 25% and my clients are at 62%. They're better prepared. You need to be properly prepared when you're going on these meetings, and you're going to do that by having a playbook, timing out your answers, scripting out your answers, speak your playbook and your answers into your iPhone, listen to it back. That's how you're going to be better prepared and come across as a competent professional and be able to demonstrate your technical competence. On a networking meeting, you know you're going to get asked 3 questions. Some form or fashion of these questions you're going to get asked. You need to be prepared for them. And keep in mind, your job, we said this before, is to make it easy for the other person to help you. You might be networking with someone who is not experienced in networking. They may not really know how to help you. So by you knowing what the goal is of a networking meeting, how to control the flow of a networking meeting, if you're talking to someone that's not experienced, you're going to make the meeting more productive. And again, it's to make it easy for the other person to help you. The 3 questions are, they're going to ask you some form or fashion of, tell me about yourself, how can I help you, and what are you looking for? You're going to get those 3 questions. Of course, the person is going to need to know those 3 things, especially if they don't know you. If you can, your first networking, if you're new to networking, your first meetings should be with either people that you know, or maybe a good friend of somebody that you know, to make it a little more of a friendly environment before you start meeting with, VPs and CFOs of companies. Get a few networking meetings under your belt in a friendly environment if you can. They're going to ask you these 3 questions. Tell me about yourself. How can I help you? And what are you looking for? Tell me about yourself. Very simple, 40 seconds max, script it out, time it. I have my clients break it up into 10, 15 second, 3 segments. First is the early years I call it the early years. I grew up in, went to school at, moved to Dallas in if you're not from Dallas. So I would say I grew up in New Jersey through high school, went to school up in Boston at Northeastern University, moved to Dallas in 91. First 31 years of my life in 10 seconds. The second part should start with, most recently I did this. Most recently I did this, then name 2 or 3 things that you most recently did that you enjoyed. The third 10 to 15 seconds, I would start with where I believe I can make a significant contribution to my next company are in the areas of. Name 2 or 3 areas of your background that you really enjoy, that genuinely excite you. That's how I would answer, tell me about yourself. Very simple, very high level. It's a conversation starter. As we said last week, it's really, can you answer a simple question concisely? That's what tell me about yourself, the intent is. That's how I would answer, tell me about yourself. The next is, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? Because the person is thinking, what type of job are you looking for? What types of opportunities are you looking for that they can, focus on? And I would use the third segment of tell me about yourself. So I would start with, what are you looking for? The answer is, where I believe I can make a significant contribution to my next company are in the areas of. Name 2 or 3 areas of your background that you really enjoy, that you're really good at. Don't use networking meetings unless this is the intent of the meeting. Don't use networking meetings as sounding boards. I've been in networking meetings where the other person is kind of lost on their search. You should only be meeting with people, if you're in that circumstance, that you know really well, and that's the intent of the meeting, is to help find out where your next position is going to be. But once you've established your search, you need to be fairly convicted about the direction that you want to take your career and how the other person can help you. It's fine to have 2 directions that you want to go in. Some people will say, and what I suggest to my clients is, if they want to go into one of 2 different, like, similar directions, they'll say, I'm taking a dual-pronged approach to my search. That says, I know I'm going in one of 2 directions. I'm not wandering aimlessly in my career. I'm taking a dual-pronged approach to my search. So I'm either going in this direction or that direction, and that helps the person focus. So that's, what are you looking for? Where I believe I can make a significant contribution to my next company are in the areas of. Good places to get information to fill in that the rest of that little paragraph are job descriptions of positions that you're interviewing for. Utilize job descriptions for positions that you're looking for to articulate your skill set and what you're looking to do in your next opportunity. That's a very effective way to talk about your next opportunity, are using the skills and attributes and job descriptions that you're interested in. How can I help you? Everybody is going to ask you, how can I help you? And the answer, is not, do you know of someone that could use somebody with my skills? They know you're in transition. If they know of an open position, they're going to tell you. You don't need to ask them for it. I believe the proper answer to how can I help you is, do you know anyone on my target company list? And then you provide them a target company list. And Jeff, I provided Jeff with a slide that we're going to use in a minute about how to show them a target company list. That's the answer to how can I help you? Do you know anyone on my target company list or similar company that would be good for me to talk with? and give people company names of companies and industries that you want introductions to. Don't just give industries, because people don't think of their contacts in terms of industries. People think of their contacts in terms of companies. That's why a target company list is good. And have, 10 to 12 companies on your target company list. So those are the three big questions that you need to answer. Tell me about yourself. How can I help you? And what are you looking for? So bio versus resume and a marketing plan. What's the right tool to use during a networking meeting? Some people will say it's a resume. That's fine. Always bring a resume with you, regardless of what tool you use as a discussion document. Always bring a resume with you on a networking meeting, always. Now, what tool you decide to use is up to you. I don't like leading with your resume when you're on a networking meeting. And the reason I don't like that is because I feel like I'm pushing my job search to that other person, saying, find me a job. Other people will say, well, they know you're in transition, so giving them your resume to lead is perfectly fine. It's personal preference. I prefer, Jeff, if you could put up the bio, I prefer this tool. So this is, I call this a bio. It's a Word document. If you would like a copy of it, either Jeff can give you a copy of it or email me and I'll send you a copy of it. Like I say, it's a Word document. It's very simple to change. It's clearly not a resume. It has a picture. It's landscaped, not portrait. On the left-hand side are competencies that you possess. So these are things that come from job reviews, 360 feedback that you may have gotten, things that your manager, peers, subordinates may have said about you, attributes that you possess, as I said before, from job descriptions that you're interested in applying for, which are a great source of information to use about how to describe yourself either in a written or verbal format. Look at job descriptions for attributes and skills that you possess, and you can use them in this competency section. The center section is just simply a lift and drop from my resume. The important thing to me about the bio is the target company list. That to me is the really important thing about the bio, because it answers the question, how can I help you? Do you know anyone on my target company list that would be good to talk with? Or similar company? Doesn't need to just be these 10 or 12 companies. It can be these companies or similar type companies. You're making it easy for the person to help you. You're giving them a list of companies to see if they know anybody from this. And it's going to jog their memory. And then they're going to say, you know what, I don't know somebody at this company, but I know somebody at this other company that's similar. And it's going to start them thinking about who they can introduce you to. Now, somebody, when you give them the bio, if you choose to lead with your bio, they may say, oh, the bio is great. Do you have a copy of your resume? And give them a copy of your resume. Some people might prefer looking at your resume versus the bio. That's fine. Maybe they have or know of an opening and want to take it to the next level and want a copy of your resume. So if you choose to lead with the bio, like I say, which I prefer because it's a little softer in a discussion document than a resume. It's a little different. People like it, even though it has a lot of the same information as your resume, but it answers the question, how can I help you? Do you know anybody on my target company list that would be good for me to talk to? That's what I believe the big benefit of the bio is versus a resume. So I think that's the proper tool to use on it. Always keep your eyes and ears open during networking meetings. What I mean by that is when you're in a networking meeting, always listen for how people present themselves. Listen for words people use and think about, do I want to incorporate that phraseology or not? And an example of a phrase I don't like, when I was networking, I'd be in networking meetings with finance people, and people would use the term, as a finance person, my value proposition is. And I just think that's kind of a corny phrase to use for a finance person, unless you're heavily involved in M&A or doing something to add revenue to the bottom line directly. You know, I think phrase of hyperbole and exaggeration don't serve you very well. So, you know, listen for phrases that people use that you want to include or exclude from the presentation of yourself. People have said to me, you know, I'll go to networking meetings and I don't get a lot out of them. And I'll say, well, what do you do in a networking meeting? And they'll say, well, I stand up and I say, you know, I give my name, you know, rank, serial number, and I'm looking for this type of job, and that's my background. And I sit down and I don't get a lot out of it. Well, of course you don't. How could you with that type of presentation? The way I believe you can make the most of a networking meeting is by going into a networking meeting in a group setting of, say it's people in transition or not. You might be at some other lunch meeting of a mix of people in transition and not, and maybe you're introducing yourself and it's a mix of employed and unemployed. Have 3 companies that you want introductions to. So when they ask you to introduce yourself, you give, you know, name, rank, serial number, you give them your background, and then say, I would really like introductions to these 3 companies. Does anyone have any connections at these 3 companies? And, you know, they can contact you afterwards. And hopefully somebody will have contacts at those companies, because that's what people in transition have to offer, right? Connections. You still have an abundance of connections that you can use, and that's how you can make the most out of being at a networking meeting of people that are in transition, is going there with 3 company names that you want introductions to. Or maybe you have an interview coming up with a company. You can say, I have an interview coming up with XYZ company. Does anybody know anyone at that company that could that I could talk with, and maybe they can put a word in to the hiring manager, something like that. That's how you make the most out of a networking meeting. Networking is a two-way street. And what I mean by that is when you're networking with someone, and this was suggested to me, what the person told me was, the 2 most powerful phrases in the English language are I love you and how can I help you? Now, there's a high probability you're not going to say I love you to somebody during a networking meeting, although I almost said it to the CFO of Comerica Bank, Texas, when our networking meeting was progressing to an interview, but I didn't, and that's a good thing, or else probably what I said happened wouldn't have happened. So good for me for exercising restraint. But the next phrase, how can I help you, is really a powerful phrase. So what was suggested to me was at the end of a networking meeting to say to the other person, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. How can I help you? Now think about that. Here you are in transition, you're in need of help, and you're asking someone, assume the other person's employed, you're asking somebody that's employed, how can I help you? Now, to me, that is what I call a level setting phrase, because when I was in transition, I felt I was below the person that I was networking with. They have a job, I don't, I need their help. But when you say to someone, how can I help you? It's level setting. It shows that you're not a taker. It shows that even though you need help, you're not a taker. You want to give. So the first time that I used that happened to be when I was meeting with the partner in a private equity firm. We're going to lunch. And I'm thinking to myself as the lunch is winding down and he offered to make introductions on my behalf. I'm thinking, I'm going to say to this partner in a private equity firm, how can I help you? And he's going to like roll his eyes and say, you know what, I'm fine, but thanks. But I did. So at the end of the meeting, I said, Peter, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. Tell me, how can I help you? Now, when you say that to people, especially if they're employed, they're going to be shocked in a positive way. Because not many people, I can guarantee you, not many people that are in transition that they're networking with are asking them how they can be helped, right? It's just not going to happen. So you're going to separate yourself from the competition by doing that, and you're going to show that you're not a taker. So Peter said he paused because he was, I think, taken aback. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, I have a client. I see that you work at Alliance Data. I have a client that would really love an introduction to the CFO of one of their divisions, the retail division. Could you do that? And I said, sure. His name's Dan. I talk to him once a week about his forecast. I could absolutely do that. So I made the introduction. Their client wound up doing a deal with Alliance Data, which is great, but that's not really the point. The point is that you ask. 95% of the time, the person's going to say, I'm all set, but thank you for asking. But you don't know what the person might say. And you know, it could be anything. You don't know. The point is that you ask, that you asked when you were in a time of need, you said to the other person, how can I help you? It's very powerful. And that's what I mean by networking is a two-way street. So I strongly encourage you to use that phrase at the end of a networking meeting. So the last thing is job lead sharing. Job lead sharing sounds counterintuitive, but I don't believe it is. Here's the example. When I was in transition, I was doing all of the things in search that I outlined earlier. So you're real busy. And I felt like opportunities were getting past me, that I just couldn't keep up with everything that needed to be done when you're doing all of the things that I outlined earlier. So I decided to get together with two other guys and job lead share. Because if you know of an opening, chances are a few 100,000 other people know of the opening, right? It's not like too many openings are closely held. And the three of us, even though we were going for the same position, were all very different. I had a CPA, one of the other guys had an MBA, one of the other guys was a PhD, but we're all going for the same job, vice president of financial planning, basically. And we would job lead share. And it was very helpful. We exposed ourselves to more opportunities because we were each hearing of different opportunities. And the fact of the matter is, if one of us found out an opportunity and shared it, it didn't reduce my chances of getting the job if these other two guys knew about it, because we're very different. They were very qualified, but we were very different backgrounds, very different experience, work experience, very different educational backgrounds, and very different, socioeconomic and ethnic backgrounds. We three of us couldn't have been more different. So it didn't reduce our chances of getting the job. And it got to the point, and this is no exaggeration, where myself and the gentleman that had the PhD, we ended up going for the same job. We were in an outplacement firm in an office type environment. And he we were both going to be interviewed for the job. He went first. He did the phone screen. He walked across the hall. He told me the direction of the interview from the phone screen. So I had some time to prepare, so I could prepare and focus on the direction that he just told me. We both advanced to the next round. I said, well, then I'm going to go first. When we schedule the interviews, let's schedule it where I go first. Since you went first last time, I went first, got the direction of the next level interviewer, walked across the hall, told him, here's the focus of the interview for this next interview. He prepared in that fashion. We both advanced to the third round. At this time, I had an offer from another company that I took, and he ended up getting that job. I believe that is a great example of job lead sharing, helping out someone else in a similar situation. We couldn't have been more different in almost every way, except for our vocation. And that job either had his name on it or it had my name on it. And the fact that we were helping each other and competing, I don't believe reduced my chances for getting the job. So to close, let's just go over, the summarize the interview flow, the networking meeting flow again, right? You're going to do your preparation on the person and the company. You're going to be prepared to answer the 3 questions. Tell me about yourself. How can I help you? What are you looking for? Ask for 20 minutes. Ask for advice and feedback. Summarize at the end of the meeting what the person offered to do for you. Summarize in your thank you note to that person what they offered to do for you. Send a thank you note to the person you met with, to the person that introduced you. Ask that person, how can I help you at the end of the networking meeting, and do a time check at the end of the 20 minutes. If you conduct your networking meetings in this fashion, I'm confident it will shorten your search and you'll have very, very productive networking meetings. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Jay, thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to unmute your mic and ask away. I know that was a lot of information for everybody. I hope you all were taking great notes. Questions?
Yeah, hey,
William?
Jay, thanks. This is Bill Whitmore here in Cleveland. You said there were 2 things that are number 1 in your network meeting, chemistry, and what was the other one? I probably should know.
Technical competence. Whether it's a networking meeting or an interview, those 2 things need to be present for the meeting to go forward. If you don't establish chemistry with the person and you can't demonstrate your technical competence, the meeting's not going to go anywhere.
Thank you very much.
All right, anybody else?
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you said in the very beginning there were like 5 things: gathering info, or maybe this was written down somewhere. I can look it up. I don't want to redo this over, but
All right. I'm sorry, what was the context?
you said in the very beginning.
Oh, what is networking?
Yes.
Right. So to me, it's gathering information, gaining advice and feedback, making connections to others that can help you, and generating insights and ideas.
Got it.
That's what networking is. It's not asking somebody for a job. It's not asking somebody, do you know of anyone that can use somebody with my skills? Because if the other person does, they'll tell you. You don't need to say that to them.
Correct. Thank you.
And just to let everybody know, I will, I've posted the bio in the chat. I also will include it in the email this afternoon. So as long as I have your contact information in the chat window, I'll be sure to send that out in email. I'll send out a link for today's presentation. I'll send out a link of last Wednesday's interview session. If you want to go back and watch Jay's interview session on effective interviewing, I'll include that in the email, but I just need to make sure I have your contact information in the chat window. Anybody else have a question or comment?
Thanks, Jay.
Hi, Jeff. This is Meredith.
Yeah, Meredith.
Hi. I wanted to ask what the document that you shared with us, when do we use that? Or what is the suggestion for that?
So I would use that in the beginning of the networking meeting as you're talking about what you're looking for. You can present them with that document as a discussion document is really what it is. And it's usually very well received by people because most people, when you're networking, are used to looking at resumes. And like I say, there's nothing wrong if that's what you choose to lead with is your resume. I prefer the bio because it's a little softer than your resume. It's a little different. And it answers the question of how can I help you, which is, do you know anyone on my target company list that would be good to talk to? And you've got your target company list right there for the person to see. They can make notes on it. You can make notes on your copy, right? So it's a discussion document to use in the beginning of your networking meeting. You can say, may I share this bio with you? And most people will be like, sure, let me see it.
If you were going to have a networking meeting and meet somebody at Starbucks or whatever, would you send it to them beforehand? Because this way they'd have a picture to know, oh, here's what you look like.
Absolutely. Yep.
I highly recommend the bio. I think it's a wonderful thing. Here's a book called Be Sharp. It's by Minna Brown and Paul Asanoff. If you get the second edition of this book, the whole second half of this book has about 30 or 40 different bios in it. So there's different formats, different types of bios to use. I think it's a really great book. If you haven't used a bio, you're not sure what to do with it. It's a very effective tool. Now you need to be careful. So on Jay's bio that he put out, he had to list the target companies. But if you're meeting with somebody at one of those companies,
right,
you better take that off because they're going to go, well, why do you want to interview with these other companies?
Right. So great point, Jeff. And I should have brought that up. I would say either that or, and ask me how I know this, make sure when you're meeting with someone that their company is on the target company list. It happened to me once, like most things. It happened once and it didn't happen after that. I was rushing. I was meeting with somebody at a company. I failed to put their company on my target company list. And one of the first things they said was, well, I guess you don't want to work here because XYZ company is not on the list. If you want to crawl under a table, that's a good time to do it. So unless there's a really good reason why you wouldn't work there, say, for example, maybe you're meeting with a professor at a university and you have zero interest in working at a university, then it would be fine to not have the school on your list. Aside from that, out of respect to the other person, I would have their company first on the list and be prepared for them to say, why would you want to work here? Or why would you want to work, how did you choose these companies? You don't need a PhD level answer to that question. You just need to have an answer. The companies are profitable. They're expanding. They are in a market that I want to be in. They're public companies, they're private companies, they're mid-sized, they're large, whatever the case might be. Just be prepared. A logical question to be asked is, why these companies, or why do you want to work for our company, right? It all comes down to preparation. But thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up, because yes, the company of the person that you're meeting with should be the first company on your target company list.
Great. Question from anybody
Thank
else?
you. Jeff, can you include the two books, including Jay's book as well as the one you just showed in your
Yes,
email?
I'll put both
Okay.
those links in the email I put
Okay.
out this afternoon. Yeah,
Okay,
I've got
thank you.
Jay's,
Hey,
book.
Jeff, I did have one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, would either of you consider having a picture, a photo on a bio, a drawback as it would be on a resume? Because if someone were to then, say pass your bio off to a colleague along with your resume before you make it into that interview process, do you think that would lend itself to predispositions or any sort of, issues, as it were, if you put your photo right on your resume?
You want me to answer that, Jeff, first?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah. I would not have a problem with it at all. What I would suggest on the picture is that it be that you are dressed professionally and that the picture looks fairly professional. The picture on that bio is probably as casual as I would go with a picture. At least, I have a sport coat on, it looks fairly professional, but it shouldn't be, I'll just say for exaggeration purposes, a palm tree in the background and sunglasses and a drink in your hand or something like that, right? It's not Facebook. It needs to be a professional, headshot, something that you would use on LinkedIn, something like that. But if somebody's going to prejudge you based on a professional looking picture, they would prejudge you on the interview or the networking meeting regardless, right? So
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think it's a detriment. I would make it clear to people that let me give you a copy of my bio. And I would say I have a copy of my resume if you would like it, but I would like to lead with my bio so they know that's not your resume.
Absolutely.
I think you have to remember that every one of us has picked a significant other probably by the way they looked. There was something that attracted us at a concert, at a bar, at a social meeting, at church, whatever, that, come interview time, on a bio is a perfect time to put a picture, because especially if you're going to meeting with somebody, you've made that relationship count. You never want to put a picture on a resume, never ever put a picture on a
Right.
resume, because a resume can be a legal not a legal document, but a lot of companies don't want to do that. But believe me, if I'm going to have an interview with you, I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn. And the same picture, I better see a picture of what you look like. And it better
should be
be
the
a
same
fairly
picture on the-
current picture. Don't show me a picture from 20 years ago of what you used to look like, because I'm going to go, well, what else are you hiding if you're not showing me a fairly current picture of who I am? So like when I
Absolutely.
grew my beard from COVID, I had to go get a new picture made. And so, that's what I went and put up there so that people will be able to recognize me the way I look now. Any other questions?
Great feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Jay, I have a question. During your calling, when you called on CEOs, you obviously probably most of the time met a gatekeeper before you got to the CEO. So how did you, when the gatekeeper says, and what is this matter pertaining, and why do you want to talk? How did you approach that?
I said it was personal.
Okay.
And, there are a lot of factors involved. It's how you come across, if you have trepidation in your voice when you're talking to them, if you're confident, what kind of day they're having. And if they're tough or if they're a little bit rushed, they also know their boss. If they're really strict about what phone calls they take. But I just said it was personal, and she said, okay, and he picked up.
The other thing you can try to do too is call before 8 o'clock in the morning, because
Right.
sometimes the secretary is not there yet. Call after 5 o'clock or after 5:30, or maybe try during lunchtime, 12:30, 1 o'clock. You just never know.
Those are very, very good ideas, and simply say to the person, I would, you can say, I'm giving you a call. I would really appreciate your advice and feedback regarding my search. And think about if you're cold calling, and I said this earlier, think about if you get a response from a cold call, especially, and I wasn't thinking about this, when I met with the CFO, I didn't have the experience that I now have, but why would somebody call you back from a cold call? The greater chance is because they know of or have an opening versus they just want to be helpful. Because if you're cold calling somebody and you say, I would really appreciate your advice and feedback regarding my search. My background is I'm a VP of financial planning. And do you have 20 minutes? I would love to talk to you about it. It's probably 90-10 that if that person calls you back, it's because they have or know of an opening, 10% that they're being a nice guy. Right now, I didn't think about that at the time, but I mean, that's, really, why else would somebody do that? And when I met with the CFO as a result of this cold call, he did not tell me right away, as soon as we sat down, Jay, I'm so glad you came to see me because I have an opening and I can't believe how fortunate I am that you showed up. He didn't say that. He didn't tell me anything for 20 minutes. He wanted to see if we had chemistry, wanted to see if I was technically competent. If neither of those two things were there, he would have had a very easy out. Hey, thank you very much. Why don't you talk to these, 3 people that I know? And he would have sent me on my way, and, the rest is history. But he didn't play the I have a job card until 20 minutes in, when we established chemistry and I was able to demonstrate technical competence. Then he told me he had an opening. Until then, he was keeping it close to the vest so he could have a nice, polite out, right?
Right. Great. Anybody else? Any other questions for anybody before we wrap up?
Thanks, Jay.
Anyone else? All right. Well, Jay, thank you very, very much for your time. Great information today. I mean, it's always a pleasure, and to have you twice in 1 month was wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and it's my pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Right. So I'll be sure to put out links to today and last week's presentation, links to the books. I'll put a copy of the bio in our presentation, in our thing today. So I'll get everything out to everybody to make it easy for you. All right, let me share a couple of last slides and we will get out of here. Now, let's see here. Here we go. Next Friday, we're going to have open forum. So it's the first Friday of the month. We'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. So please, please, please bring your questions. Be ready to go. It is April Fool's Day, so I hope there'll be no jokes next Friday, but we'll have to see how everybody acts next Friday. If you have not put your 30-second introductions into the chat window, please do so I can be sure to get you the Zoom links, get you the contact of everybody who's been on the call today. We'd really appreciate it. That way I know that you're with us. Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us next Tuesday. Kurt Vondermatter will be with us to talk about LinkedIn from a recruiter's eye. Kurt spends $10,000 a year on the full-blown recruiting package, and you'll get to see what it looks like from his perspective and what he looks for when he's trying to find you. Next Wednesday, we'll do a special event for Interviewing Wednesdays. We'll talk about avoiding interview crashes. This is session 13 of 13 of the 13-part series with Mark and Walt. And then next Thursday, being the 5th Thursday of the month, instead of talking about networking or resumes, we'll get back to that in April. Successful job searches focus on these 4 areas, and I'll be doing that live from the Association of Managed Care Professionals Conference in Chicago. So we'll see you all next Thursday. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. Please follow us on Facebook. When that happens, every time we go live, you'll get a little, your phone will give you a little buzz. please subscribe to our Career USA YouTube channel. When you do that, you'll get an email every time I post a new video. On the Career USA YouTube channel, it looks something like this. Please be sure to click on the green arrow so you get playlist, because every video that I upload, I stick into a playlist. And at the very bottom, pick whatever playlist you want and then click view full playlist. And when you do that, up comes a list of all the different titles and dates. The most current one should be on top. If not, click the little sort button. And that way you can scroll down and find whatever video it is you'd like to go back and watch. Join us for lunch today. Please join us today at 12:30. You got to have lunch. You got to put some nourishment in your body. If you live in Texas, you're required to eat barbecue occasionally. So come join us at Dickey's Barbecue on Preston Road, north of Parker, just south of Spring Creek, 12:30 today. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. Have a great weekend. Jay, once again, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see everybody hopefully at lunch.
Very welcome.